the New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.
Hey folks, greetings and welcome along to the New Zealand Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Paul Spain, and great to have Matt Archer back on the show. How are you, Matt?
Very good, thank you, Paul. Thanks for having us.
Good to get a chance to catch up again, to shoot the breeze on all things that have been happening in the tech world recently, and to find out a little bit about what you're up to these days as Chief Technology Officer at Quadrent.
Yeah, well, been working with the team at Quadrent for the last about 2 years now. Got some really exciting things happening there. Quadrent is a lessor, so spent the last 20 years building a reputation as one of the most trusted financiers Australasia, and we're doing some really cool stuff with a green lease now, which is designed to help kids and get some of that technology that's sitting in corporate New Zealand and Australia to where it can really help as part of a second life. So
really interested in delving into that. So we'll be talking about that. We're talking around a mix of sort of global and local news. A New Zealand company that's collaborating with Toyota. We're going to delve in there on the liquid hydrogen storage. GM and some of their investment into autonomous driving and robotaxi technology. Meta, Adobe. We might tap in on Musk's big Tesla payout and a few other topics. One that I think that we should delve into as well is whether we actually need all these new so-called AI computers and smartphones, or whether we're actually being taken for a little bit of a ride. So some interesting insights there that I think folks will might find useful. But of course, before we jump in, a big thank you to our show partners, to 1NZ, 2 Degrees, Spark, HP, and Gorilla Technology. First up, we've got news from a sort of I guess it's a news that covers Fabrum, which is based in Christchurch, a New Zealand company who are sort of leaders in the world of as they put it, zero emission transition technologies aimed at sort of enabling the lower carbon technology or the economy, and that and they're doing this deal with Toyota with their proprietary liquid hydrogen storage technology. So it seems like Toyota are still very, very committed to hydrogen. But it has, it's been a challenge creating, a network of refueling, capabilities around New Zealand. So, this sounds interesting. What what are your thoughts? Has hydrogen got a, do you see it playing an important role as we kind of try and move away from traditional and fossil sort of fuels?
Yeah, I think the emission side of things is certainly really interesting. I remember seeing a video of some of these hydrogen refueling stations that, the forecourt covered in solar panels. So these things don't even need to be on the grid to function. So when they get refueled, you've got all these tanks on one side, and then all the electrics and all of the connectivity all happens completely off grid. So I think in the world where we're dependent still on electricity to fuel our devices, we're in a bit of a spot of bother when the lights have got to be turned off, which is kind of what we need to do to get those emissions down, right? So I remember when I went down the West Coast, Tess and I did a trip down the west coast of the South Island, and halfway around this tiny little town is this single electric refueling station. I thought, man, you'd have to be pretty game to take your EV up and down that coast, considering there's like one point on a very, very long road. So I think,
Yeah, I think it's when you go if you're going sort of Hart. So if you were going from say Wanaka to try and get up to the west coast, you've got you've got to hope you don't get into bother. And some of the charges that were there, because they're not, if I recall correctly, they're not actually on kind of the national grid, right? So you can't just find some big fast charger. And it's basically, I think, when you get to say Fox Glacier, which is quite a hike, before you sort of start getting back to sort of not even full sort of access to fast EV chargers. I think there's one or two hotels, maybe Fox Glacier. So the interesting challenges, right? Interesting challenges as we try and transition away from traditional vehicles.
Because if you could drop one of those, say a hydrogen refueling station, would be a lot easier. It didn't necessarily have to be plugged in somewhere. You could remote locations like the South Island, you could drop those in quite comfortably, and all of a sudden you have a really renewable, long range, tour where you're not likely to get stuck back into nowhere. So
well, good to see always good to see Kiwi companies that are out getting that attention on the global stage. This news came through with the government delegation to Japan in recent days. There was some commentary coming through there from Prime Minister Chris Luxon around it, and also from Fabrin, and I think a big deal to be bringing on board a customer of Toyota's sort of scale and ilk. So we wish them well, and great, always good seeing
New Zealand,
Kiwi companies achieving these things. So great to see that initial business sort of signed and underway. Also, when it comes to cars, we've heard about GM putting some more cash, shall we say, into Cruise, which is the entity that has been working on the autonomous driving technologies, and have with their robotaxis in varying parts of the US. Topping that up with $850 million US dollars. I had a bit of a chuckle looking through X, Twitter, whatever we want to call it, after this news came through, and Musk's comment was something along the lines of, that's not enough. And I think General Motors have poured in, was it over $8 billion US dollars since 2017. And was it nearly $3.5 billion US dollars lost on Cruise in 2023. So there's some deep challenges with getting from the ideas when it comes to autonomy to actually delivering the end results. And of course, we've seen that with Waymo. They're over a decade kind of deep into their research and development, and yes, they are delivering services in a number of US cities, but these AI things aren't necessarily as easy. We talk about sort of exponential growth in AI, and we're solving all these problems really quickly, but actually it takes a lot of money and a lot of time for these harder cases.
I remember when Cruise came out, the thing that I thought was interesting is they chose San Fran because of the amount of hills. And it's like, this is possibly the most difficult city in the whole of America to build autonomous taxis from. So they literally chose the hardest one. And you're type of going, well, maybe you could have started maybe with a straight line rather than, the lethal weapon chase scenario. But,
Well, I guess if you can solve it in a place like San Francisco and the Bay Area, then you probably got some pretty good chances elsewhere. Absolutely. So I mean, Yeah, very interesting to see. You do like, even, Tesla and so on, you see some of these, real sort of deep experts in AI technology and so on coming and going from these firms. And it is quite fascinating just seeing the sort of the way that folks sort of move around from, from one new cutting edge and endeavor to another. And yeah, looking at this one, I'm thinking, man, when do they get to the end of their journey? And I'm not sure that that this is going to be the year for Cruise.
It's hard though, right? Because you just have one pedestrian incident and everything gets pulled. The only real acceptable level is zero failure, which is, there's a lot of really crazy pedestrians that are having all sorts of accidents that have got nothing to do with human drivers at the moment. So I don't know. I think it's a very hard bar for these guys to be pursuing. But yeah, good luck to them.
Yeah. Yep. So interesting times. Now, Meta. They seem to keep appearing in the news.
Wonder why.
Now, I'm really particularly complimentary of them as a business because they seem to do so many dumb and bad things. But I was pleased to read that they're halting plans to train their AI on Facebook and Instagram posts. When I first read that headline, it's like, oh, good guys, this is a good thing. And then I read the rest of it, which said in the EU.
Right.
So they're just,
the one region where they'll get a big smacked bottom if they do the bad things.
Yeah, they get that smackdown, right? So because they were going to be extending things into Europe, but obviously it's all just too hard. So they've put out a blog post where they'd previously sort of touted coming AI features for the EU, but those things take a back seat. It will be interesting to see how other players navigate EU on these sorts of matters, because their legislation is more restrictive, shall we say, and often in ways that are really good for consumers and other businesses, but not always. So we'll have to see how that stuff plays out. Have you interacted much with Meta's AI? I see there when if you go into say Facebook and Instagram and so on, we used to have a search of your AI stuff's there. There's these AI elements that are built in. It doesn't sort of seem like a big game changer at this point.
Yeah, I think that the challenge is whether it be Meta or Apple, they're giving away all the candy that everybody wants. I mean, everyone wants to use this AI to create memojis and to do all these things that are relatively, window dressing cosmetic pieces. But what's happening to the data behind the scenes, I think, is the most concerning. You sell the farm to have your pretty avatar sparkling with all sorts of other things, and meanwhile they're tracking your entire purchase history through Facebook Marketplace and everybody who is in your group and what their socioeconomic status and what they're doing to sell marketing insights to other people. So I think the output for the end user is so little compared to what they are taking behind the scenes, and almost feel like we need more policemen, right? More whistleblowers to say, hey, just so you know, this is what committing to AI and letting them use your data means, right? You're being profiled at a very deep level after this, and I think it's concerning Facebook. I think of not being quick to come to the party to explain how they use the data. But if you're a business and you're wanting to buy insights and you're wanting to market to people, those parts of the world know very much how valuable the Facebook data is. So
you have the challenge that if you kind of look across the broader populace, it's really hard for everyone to really be up to date on what are the risks associated. We're all busy. We understand in our businesses, our data needs to be kind of kept private because varying legal things, what the impact will be on our customers and clients and so on. If you end up, sharing your data, what will be the impact on the business if its own intellectual property gets shared? So those things are probably easier to understand, but even there, I think, the habits of a lot of folks aren't necessarily as wise as they should be. But when it comes to the consumer world, we have that love for, yep, I've got this and it's free, so I will use it without necessarily thinking, too much further. The EU is, right, I guess, the somewhat exception that there is a stronger layer of legislation to provide protection.
And my thoughts as well is, while I may have a security background and understand in depth the risks that I and my businesses may be affected by the stuff, my mum and dad, who aren't in business, retired, right, that are on the Facebooks all the time, and yes, I'd love to link my son, Matt, and his network to my network for you to web crawl. I don't have a whole lot of.
It's not quite how you think about it, but that's what you're doing, right?
Exactly. And so if someone wants to pivot me, they can pivot my family, who may not be as conscientious about these things. And I think Facebook very much understand those relationships because the whole platform's been built on them.
Yeah.
And so I think they should be taking a slightly more mature and responsible approach to what this means now, because 99% of people have no idea what it actually means saying yes to that. It's not just an emoji, it's a whole world of potential profiling which you're committing to. So
yeah, and I think they operate on, there's this sort of basis of doing bad stuff will hurt them, like the Cambridge Analytica scandal and other dramas that they've had over time. But in most cases, it seems that the share price bounces back, and people are quite quick to forget. So I'm kind of curious how we bring about changes for bad actors, of which I see Meta as being one of those one of those bad actors, because of the dangerous impact that they have on youngsters. Because of the way that they treat their, even the, paying advertisers and so on, the way that they don't offer much help if an account gets compromised, and, you've had a company account set up for your business and someone, rebrands it to this or that, uses your credit card to run a pile of advertising. You want to get it back to the state that it was in before it was compromised. Yeah, they can't help you.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't have a lot of
not a lot of love there.
Maybe we'll see that change in the years ahead. Now, Adobe, another big technology company. They've suffered a bit of backlash around their terms of service, and we've seen a little bit of this with sort of a range of firms, with people saying, "Oh, look at the terms of service of this company. Don't ever trust them."
Yes.
And Adobe have been hit with that, as people got pretty upset with their terms of service. So they've come in and quite quickly changed their terms of service to I guess avoid it hitting them in the pocket effectively. So I guess you've just got to move quickly when you make these kind of mistakes, or you don't communicate something in a clear enough way. And sometimes this has a bit of a flow on. You were mentioning before we started around what software was it you got an alert from saying, hey, our terms of service are such that we will never be scraping your data and using it to train our AI.
It was the Miro drawing platform.
Yep.
And it was a very specific update that said, the data that you use on our platform will never be used to train our AI. And it was like, and please click here to read our current terms and conditions. So clearly, Adobe, what was being leveled at Adobe potentially has got a much wider breach, and I'm sure the inbox is going to get fill up with a number of other of those type of disclaimers. Because I guess in the litigious world, I know the time that I spent in the United States, the terms and condition sheets are just a completely different animal. I know the businesses I was involved in New Zealand might have a 5 to 10 page T's and C's. When you get to the States, it turns into like 40-page 6-point font, and every single potential scenario ends up having to be covered. So I think the global market that we're in, all of this stuff is going to be tested in some court of law sooner or later. And if you're unlucky to be the first one off the rank, you're going to pay the cost of the learning for the wider community. So,
lessons are getting learned. Meantime, Adobe seem to be doing reasonably well in terms of their their stock. Not at their all-time highs, but they're doing pretty well. Put it that way. And it will be interesting to see what the future of them is as a business, but certainly their move into very much a sort of software as a service, as followed in the steps of I guess Microsoft and others. That model has worked out very well for Adobe. But on the flip side, they have been smacked down a little bit for hiding termination fees and making it difficult for folks to cancel their subscriptions, to the degree that the US Department of Justice has actually filed a lawsuit against them, alleging that they're deceiving consumers by hiding those early termination fees and making it difficult for people to cancel. So it's good to see that governments are sort of coming after some of the bad actions from these bigger entities who at times need to be held to account.
It's got to be quite bad though before a government gets involved, don't you? So it's not like they've necessarily jumped in and said, "Oh, just because we feel like being good citizens, we'll do this." You just imagine there's been a lot of noise up to that point. So
usually a pretty big deal. Now, Friday was an interesting day because we got that confirmation through that and I don't know exactly what it worked out in New Zealand dollars. I think I did an interview with TV3 on Friday, and I think they were saying that Elon Musk payout. Well, it's not a direct sort of cash payout, but they were talking about I think in the 80 billion New Zealand dollar range, 46 billion US. Now, this was a really interesting scenario because what are we going back? Roughly 5 years or so. This pay package was put in where if they were able to, or if under Musk's leadership, he was able to see Tesla scale to something like, I don't know what the amount was exactly, but it was sort of more than 10 times its value at the time. Then he was going to get a really big payout, maybe maybe a tenth or so of that increase in value, through stock allocations and so on. So then that got taken away by by a judge who was like, oh, this wasn't made clear enough, and I think there was a fair bit of debate around whether it was or wasn't, but it seemed like most shareholders were saying no, we knew what we were agreeing to, and so new vote came in conjunction with their annual AGM, I suppose, and this thing has been sort of ratified again. So
75% or something.
Confirm that he's
overwhelming, wasn't it?
Yeah, that he's got the payout. Interestingly, some other things were that weren't recommended by the board were accepted. One of the things was that they needed much bigger than 50% for these sorts of votes. In the past, maybe it was 2/3 that were needed to get things through, especially things that were, certainly things that have been put forward by shareholders, and so a few behind the scenes changes there that have been accepted, which may end up sort of changing the shape of Tesla in the future. But to me, it's an absolutely ridiculous, eye-watering sort of sum that we're talking about here. So completely, almost impossible to really get your head around for a normal person, where these sorts of figures don't really make any sense or mean anything. But to me, it was like, well, that was up to shareholders to decide, how they would want to reward that. And a lot of folks would have done really well out of it. And when we look at Tesla's business or Musk's businesses, Tesla and SpaceX especially, we look at companies that have really been on the cutting edge and have moved at a pace that others haven't been able to, and that in many ways the rest of the tech world looks at. Is that how you look at it? What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, look, I think you've got some people that are building these massive, funds of money by buying companies and holding them forever and just watching them grow into these megaliths. And then you've got someone like Elon, who is an agitator, like a polarizer, but to say he's not a man of action would be completely incorrect. So, you've got the opportunity, I think, if you're a shareholder for Tesla, to have someone like that stay with the company for another half of a decade is possibly the best money you could ever spend, right? Especially if his participation has continued to be yardsticked to the performance and growth of your entity. So, I think they're lucky to have him. I personally think the guy is an absolute genius, and I just love his action and his approach to a lot of these big problems. He's not afraid to talk about moving Earth to another planet, which in some regards is total lunacy, but yet he's building all of these technologies to facilitate that. So, at the end of the day, if he's bringing the return in, his bosses are the shareholders. As you said, there's nothing cloak and dagger about this. It was spelled out at the beginning. The shareholders could have changed it.
Yep.
They have the ability to change it moving forward. But I think he was pretty vocal that, if you take this away from me and you screw me, I'm going to go and start a competitor company to Tesla, which is like the death knell of Tesla. And if anyone on the planet could do that, it probably would be him. So, I think on balance, everyone's going to win on it. And, maybe it'll fund another crazy go to Mars company in the mix as well. So
yeah. The other thing that was happening late last week, and I think it was ended up being covered in the same news story, and certainly from TV3's coverage, was that we're now seeing that researchers out of USC and the States are saying that they're concerned about ozone risks associated with deorbited satellites, and I guess the focus is on deorbited Starlink satellites from SpaceX. So it's I guess it's kind of a bit of pushback on, look, yes, Musk's companies are innovating at a rapid pace, but there is a risk when you're moving very quickly that you break things, and some things are okay to break. Other things, if we end up sort of destroying ozone layer, that might not be something that would necessarily play out well. So, interestingly, the last few years, there have been some times where the ozone layer's been in a lot better state. It does seem to kind of vary from year to year, but we're not in the sort of constant going backwards to the scale that we were. I think what was I reading that the stats are showing that the Earth's ozone layer is only slightly increased between 2022 and 2023. There are some genuine concerns that what goes on in space may impact that. So
it's a big place, though, right? I mean, I remember reading that the total volume of the oceans of the Earth is something like 1.3 billion cubic kilometers, and the total amount of plastic wastes is 0.2 of 1 cubic kilometer. So the sheer volume is just immense. And it's not to say we shouldn't be looking at these things, because the way the exponential curves work, we could be in a whole world of trouble very shortly.
Yeah.
It's a hard one to measure as well, I guess.
Yeah, look, I think there will be a lot of interest in this now, and I think we need to know what we're getting ourselves in for, don't we? And if there are some really negative environmental impact of satellites, then we're going to need some way of looking to address that. You send them off into the ether. Do you give them enough juice to turn them in a direction and throw them towards the sun? What do you do? Do
you land them? Everyone's got their own little landing capsule. Pick it up like a net, netting fish. Bring them all home again.
Yeah, there's I'm sure a whole range of options, but it's good that this is being looked into.
Yeah.
Now, we promised to talk around AI PCs and smartphones and whether we are being scammed. And this one came up because of a point you made before we started when we were sort of chatting. And Apple have put a bit of a line in the sand when it comes to some of their new AI capabilities coming through in iOS. And I guess Mac OS too. And we've probably seen a little bit of discussion online as well with Microsoft and their Copilot PCs, and there's a whole lot of controversy around Microsoft recall. And when recall was announced, people sort of started kicking the tires and having a look at it, and it was a special feature for AI-only PCs, for these Copilot PCs. And some folks were kind of curious and wondered, well, why would they limit it to, do they really need the new chips? Or is this marketing spin so that Microsoft can sell, more Windows licenses, I guess, with new computers, and I don't know what their behind the scenes deals are with the likes of Intel and Qualcomm for chips and so on, but quite possibly there's some benefits maybe beyond their Windows licenses too. Who knows? But yeah, this idea of just limiting it to these brand new machines was something a few folks were curious about. And so it wasn't long before you jump online and people were sharing, oh, you can turn this stuff on your, non-brand new AI chipped up PC. And actually it seems to be just fine.
Yeah.
And then, we look, oh, hold on. You need the iPhone 15, do you, to do X, Y, Z. So that, I guess that's the question. Should we be should we be limited, or actually is it actually very reasonable and very fair when you think around, hey, it wasn't that many years ago you would buy, you'd buy a phone, you'd buy a car, you'd buy a laptop, and what it came with, it just stayed the same. Now, the iPhone and so Apple with their products, and Tesla, probably especially, and certainly Microsoft with Windows, and there's a raft of others, have taught us what you buy on day one, actually it's going to get better over its life. But there is a flip side to it, isn't there? That these companies are still out there to make a profit, and sometimes they're going to draw a line and say, look, you need to buy the latest and greatest to get it. I guess what I'm not sure about is when is that fair, and when is it taking us all for a ride? And it did feel a little bit like that with what Microsoft were doing with recall, although recall is probably something you want to stay well away from. But if that was something that you had really wanted, you might have felt a bit hard done by, that you're going to need to buy some new hardware when, if you wanted to use it kind of officially without doing any kind of hacks on your system. We look at the chips that are in our phones, and some of those older chips, maybe actually they could do what we're being told you have to have the latest top end phone in order to do.
Yes, it depends on what the product is that you're buying, right? Because if you're buying a hardware device like an iPhone that should be able to be used for whatever you, the owner and the contributor of the finance, wants it to be used for, then there's been all sorts of lawsuits in America upholding people's right to use their own device the way that they want to use it, right? And to the point of unbuckling Apple's very controlling support rules about servicing devices. Should you be able to go to a non-Apple provider to service the product? But if the product is actually Apple Intelligence, right, and they have, and you are now, through the terms and conditions, using a product that they define must be used in a particular way, and it just so happens that there's another hardware piece that's a precursor to it, be interesting to know where the line of ownership is. Because, if you go back a number of years, jailbreaking iPhones was the way that you turned on the next world of functionality. I mean, I remember jailbreaking one of my iPhones way back in the day because hotspots were, you wanted to use your iPhone for a hotspot. This was a radical concept to be able to use your phone as a mobile internet router. But you couldn't do that, on the Apple iPhone, because they locked it out unless you had a SIM unlock or something to that effect.
Particularly in the US, right? I think the US market, it was quite closely tied to, to whatever the deal was between the carrier and Apple. Yeah, look, I find it is a really interesting one, and I think probably each case is going to be a little bit different. I've noticed with Tesla that they've been talking about putting an AI kind of chat type capability into the car. I'm presuming it would be a kind of link up to the to the cloud type capability. That's an area like other things where it's got better over time, but I am also seeing them launch certain features, and certain ones are, if you've got XYZ chip in your car, so it depends when you bought it. And in their case, it does seem to be kind of, interestingly, the sort of the most at the more honest end of the picture, right? They're not trying to cut you out of features from what I'm seeing because you haven't bought their very latest car. It's more, look, if the current processor can handle it reasonably well, and the what you've got in there in terms of hardware can handle it, we'll give it to you. If that's going to cause some sort of a challenge, it's not going to run smoothly or what have you, then they don't roll out that functionality. Probably the only exception I can think of, and they haven't explained it well, and this will have racked up some gamers. Now I'm drawing a blank. The gaming particular gaming platform,
the NVIDIA Go.
It'll come back to me, but basically a whole ecosystem of games that you could run on some specific Teslas that had enough memory, the right GPU, and so on. I think it was Steam actually. So you'd be able to run these Steam games in your car, which for some people is just, this is incredible. This is not what you expect of a car, to have that sort of processing to be able to operate. And Tesla were delivering it. Now we're hearing actually, that functionality is being turned off. Now I don't know the reasoning, whether there's some sort of licensing, whether this is kind of their whether it's to do with their arrangement with Steam or what have you. So no one gets this stuff perfect, I guess, is the reality. Sometimes things get turned off. Sometimes new features can't be made available.
And if you think with Siri in particular, if you remember the early days of Siri, it was 100% cloud processing. And so you couldn't, if you didn't have an internet connection, there was no Siri. And who cares about Siri? But they started doing the for the first 5 minutes you own an iPhone, it's great. But then
the new Siri, that's what we're interested in. Apple
AI
Intelligence.
Siri.
That's it.
That transcription service that everyone started going, oh, this is amazing, but then it wouldn't work if you didn't have internet. And then subsequent versions bring that transcription onto the chip. And then Apple are wanting to be very secure. They don't want that to be leaking back to the cloud. So I do get it. They're trying to potentially juggle processing power with security. And I think everyone's trying to do the same thing, right? We're not wanting our transcriptions to be getting put on a cloud server somewhere and indexed and trawled for all sorts of things. So I think you probably have to make your own call on who are the companies to trust in these regards. But I think we shouldn't forget these are commercial entities that are they have hungry profit,
shareholders who are wanting more and more profits, and there will be elements to how they operate. And you can just look at the cost of some of the things and the margins that they make, to get a bit of a feel on whether they're there purely for us or whether they actually have some commercial intent. And I think it's fair to say all the companies we've just talked about have some great commercial or some great benefits for the users of technology, but they are there to line the pockets of their investors. So buyer beware is all I can say. Now, probably what I'm not sure if I mentioned it on recall. Sounds as though Microsoft are putting a bit of a stop and a further pause on recall than what even we were talking about last week. And so we've got these new Snapdragon X Elite and so on based laptops and tablets, new sort of Surface. Surface Pro 11, I think it is. Surface Laptop 7 that are launching in the coming hours, and a whole range of other devices there that they were expecting to launch with some access to recall. It sounds like that is not going to be quite the case. So just something to be aware of if you were very excited about Microsoft recall. And if you missed the other episodes, we talked about that. You can go back and have a listen over the past few weeks. It's been coming up a little bit. Now, I'm really keen to delve into what's happening in the world of Quadrant. You say Quadrant or Quadrent?
Quadrent, because a leasing company has a rent component to it.
So Quadrant's sort of Auckland. Is it Auckland headquartered?
We're based in Auckland. Got offices in Sydney as well, and we've got some representation in Wellington as well. So we serve the larger corporates in New Zealand and Australasia with their type of leasing requirements. So a large part of that is IT assets. So we have our large partners are investing in thousands of machines at a time, and we're helping to facilitate those into their organization and helping them achieve the business objectives they're trying to achieve. And so, a couple of years ago, we're looking at the situation in New Zealand where it comes to where our kids are and where our learning challenges are. And it's quite disturbing the fact that in New Zealand, we've got some really well-resourced communities and some really under-resourced communities. But yet, we're looking to ask the same outputs of children that are well-resourced from children that are not. And so it struck us that a lot of our customers and a lot of our partners that have got quite large fleets of notebooks that are generally at the high end, because in corporate world, if you're commanding a good position, you're going to want a good computer. And after 3 years, that computer is still going to hold a lot of processing power, probably more so than an entry-level Chromebook, from the local superstore. And so the opportunity to deal with a sustainability challenge of processing those computers through an ITAD, ensuring that we're not making these devices
through a what?
An ITAD, advanced disposal partner.
Okay,
so,
there we go.
So an ITAD is the part of the sustainability chain that says, look, give us your computer. We'll make sure that it gets wiped to government standards. We'll make sure that everything in this device is graded, and we'll then rebox that device. And a portion of the returns from our customers are going into these communities. And so kids are getting these new box experiences, courtesy of our customers. So it's a joint process, and we're also making sure that we've invested a lot in a program called R2V3, which ensures that the whole chain stays accountable. We don't want greenwashing in there. We don't want these assets going off out of country to third world environments where human trafficking and these other things, we don't want to be part of that at all. And so the program ensures that all of the assets, not just the ones that are going to the kids, but the ones that are being recycled into a circular economy, are done so with a really high level of integrity and auditability. So PwC audits us with a lot of these processes, and it's a great community that our customers are really getting involved in. So
it's really encouraging to see sort of more activity down this track, because as you say, we've got some challenges there. And look, if we can make good use of that equipment and help those that otherwise wouldn't have access to the technology, that's brilliant. And who is tending to sort of fund that? Because it's what I've noticed in the past is it's and we see this with sort of some of the sort of smaller organizations. So looking at their gear, it's come sort of end of life. They've had their the maximum sort of productivity that they've been able to get out of the device, usually over 3 years. And then the further from that, I guess the less relevant it is when you've got that need for maximum productivity in a workplace, but potentially still useful elsewhere. So there's the gear becomes available, but it's often actually pretty expensive to get that gear wiped, repurposed into a position where a youngster could start benefiting from it. So completely. How does that tend to sort of play out?
So the goal with the program is to make sure that we maximize the amount that we can give to the endpoints, but obviously there's a lot of work that has to happen on those as well. So it ends up becoming a partnership, both with the customer, with Quadrent, and with ITADs, and also with the endpoints, with the social inclusion part of the chain, where we need to work with the schools, right? Because it's not just about getting a device through, getting it cleaned up, making sure that it's of an A grade quality, because we only put the A grade units into the kids. We don't want them dealing with broken things or keyboards that aren't working or screens that have got defects. And so the way that it works is everyone contributes a part of the benefit they may have received. And then if we all just deprecate ourselves a little, then there's this great outcome that can occur for the kids at the end of the equation. And so I think that's in keeping with the sustainability approach, where if any one person looks to benefit above everyone else, then no one really actually achieves the win. And so, as you say, the life of these assets is much longer than 3 years. And so historically, companies may have chosen to try and keep those inside the business, but there's often a lot of benefits in a refresh for a customer. And let's make that second life really valuable in the community and to the learning outcomes of these kids.
Yeah.
And so that's how it works. We all take a little bit less than we would have otherwise.
Yeah.
And then the beneficiaries of those are our kids in the community.
That's really cool. And where you at in this in the journey to sort of get these things set up and and start being able to make the technology available?
We are well underway in both Australia and New Zealand. We've been working with a really well-respected company called the Smith family in Australia. That's one of the largest partners for ensuring these type of devices get into the communities we're wanting to get them into.
Yeah.
We're on our way to 20,000 devices per annum is our goal in the next couple of years to get there. We're well on the way to that, approaching 1,000 kids over the last year that we've got devices to, which is exciting, and looking to have some really big ramps towards the end of the year to help us get towards our goals on that. And so, there's a lot of interest. We've got recently nominated for a sustainability award, which we didn't unfortunately pick up last year, but maybe this year, Gary. Look, it's a great journey. It's a great narrative. Our customers are really enjoying the process of it. So,
Well, it's good. It's really really good to hear. Well, all the best with the next stages of that journey. And it's always encouraging to hear about things that are going to have a good sort of flow on. And it's not just about those youngsters at a point in time. I think if you and I were to sort of stop and to look back at the access that we got to technology, as younger people, that is key part of what sort of
critical, right?
Played into being able to build careers in the future. And
Totally agree.
and even if it's just doing a bit of gaming or whatnot, kids interacting with technology can open the doors to great learning and careers. So there's all sorts of flow on. It's not always easy to make these things happen, but I think it's worth the effort.
Totally agree.
Well, big thank you to our show partners, to Gorilla Technology, HP Spark, 2 Degrees, and 1NZ. We will, of course, be back again next week with another episode. If you've been listening to the audio, then worth tracking us down on social. You can find our live streams usually across the likes of YouTube, X, and Facebook under NZ Tech Podcast, or you can catch us on LinkedIn by following myself, Paul Spain. That's us for this week. Matt, anyone that wants to get in touch, what's the best way to track you or the Quadrent team down?
Yeah, look, I think quadrant.co.nz/green-lease or digital-inclusion will give you a bit of an update of what we're doing on that front. Otherwise, Twitter's or X, as you say, it's always a good way to connect up. So yeah,
good stuff. All right, thanks, Matt. Thanks
you,
everyone, and we'll catch you next week. Cheers.
The New Zealand Tech Podcast, brought to you by Gorilla Technology, proactive and strategic IT.